Now we're going to talk about a second way of listening, which we call active listening.
And active listening is the most clearly reference to Carl Rogers' work in creating empathic listening, reflective listening, and it's sometimes called active listening because that gets across to the listener that they're going to be actively trying to understand what the other person's trying to communicate and give that back to the other person so that the speaker can correct them. My friend Edwin Roosh at the Center for a Culture of Empathy and Compassion has created a simple, like 2-page handout called How to Host an Empathy Circle. That's what he calls them. And what I like is that he has the speaker teaching the listener. Instead of Kathy having to come in and say, okay, this is how you're going to do listening. You're going to set aside your judgments. You're going to do this and that. The simplest way to be able to hand this out and let anybody attempt it is for the speaker to say to the listener, no, that's not quite right, or I didn't say this part. And so in an empathy circle, each person gets a turn as the speaker with a listener, and then the listener has the next person next to them. The listener becomes the speaker, and the other person becomes the listener. It's a simple round-robin structure. The speaker keeps speaking until they feel like they can say, I feel totally heard. And the listener's job is to try to say back what the speaker is saying. So now we will demonstrate that, and Serge will say back some of what I've been saying. I've been going on quite a while. It would be difficult for a beginning listener, but he's going to give me an active listening reflection of at least part of what I've said.
And so, as happens, it's not a perfect science, and there is a trial and error quality. Kathy, what you were talking about is that the listener is capturing what the speaker is saying, and that the speaker is actually very instrumental in making that happen by giving instructions, giving feedback to, yeah, that's what I said, or no, that's not what I said, or yeah, this is missing. So in a way, as the listener, I don't have to worry too much about doing a perfect job, because as the listener, you're going to add something or tell me what I might have missed.
Yes, exactly. So the speaker is responsible also for checking, is that what I said? So even though we have not trained our speakers in Gendlin's focusing, which is this conscious process of checking that we'll teach in part 3, again, automatically and naturally, the speaker starts to check inside. Is that what I said? Does that get it? Well, where are they going to find the answer to that question unless they pause, again, our radical pause, and then make words out of that. So the speaker is also learning, focusing when they're getting active listening. Say that back.
Yeah. So just for instance, right now, when you end, you say, okay, say that back. So you are, managing the process, and as the speaker, you have an active role when you listen what the listener is saying, because as you listen to me, the listener, playing back what you said, there is that curiosity about, is this what I said? Does it feel right? And yeah, if it feels right, yeah. And if it doesn't, oh, wait a minute, there's this that was missing, or this that should be that way.
Yes. And so now I'm going to say that I feel fully heard, and I'm going to offer Serge, if he would like. It's awkward because we won't be able to see his face, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but to show the round-robin, equal time, peer counseling nature of this, I offer you, Serge, that you could speak, and I'll be your listener.
So it feels right. We didn't talk about it before, but it feels right as a way of demonstrating the process. And also it feels right in the sense of having you in both roles, and in the sense of emphasizing that active listening is essentially something that's done with a spirit of being peers, so that the changing roles makes it different from, say, a therapist to client relationship, when one person is a listener and the other person is the speaker.
Yes, and if he had gone on as a beginning listener, I might have said, would it be okay to stop there so I can say you back while I can hold on to it? So I'm going to say back, hopefully. So we hadn't talked about it ahead of time, but you kind of checked inside and you said, well, yes, it would make sense for me to have a turn. And in part because it would show Kathy being in both roles, as the speaker and as the listener. And it would also demonstrate that this is an equal method, a peer counseling method, where each person can be the helper or the helpee, unlike the therapeutic relationship, which is the therapist is always the listener and the client is always the speaker. And that's important to capture.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so, just in a way, right now, what's happening is I say, yeah, yeah. And I was not, it just came naturally. And this is what happens as part of the process of active listening, is that when you feel heard, what's happening is a sense of nodding, a sense of saying yeah, and it's really, we can be talking. In this case, we're talking about things where we're pretty much in sync. But what I have noticed time and again is, even when people talk about things where they're having very diverging opinions, during the moment of the listener repeating what they've heard, the speaker nods, because we're in agreement about that's what the speaker said. And I also like the fact that during the time that I speak, what the video shows is you, because there's that nodding, that quality of receiving that's there. And that's a very, very important part of this process, is that there's that visual confirmation that what I'm talking about is not going into thin air, but is being received by somebody who's really taking it in, and may not agree with me, but taking it in.
Okay, and again, as a beginning listener, I would want to stop and make sure, and it's okay to stop the person and say, okay, that's as much as I can say back. So immediately, Serge was noticing that he was nodding and saying, yes, 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 that is it. And that's important to you, Serge, as it made a light bulb go off, like, oh, this whole process, even though we might not be agreeing about what we're talking about, we are coming into an agreement or a convergence at that moment when I, as the speaker, say, yes, yes, you got it. You got what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure I got everything else, but that seemed really important to you. Like, wow,
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
be different and you can still understand and touch base there.
And you give me an opportunity to actually introduce a little correction. So that's which is a wonderful part of the process. Okay, so for instance, you said, and it made a light bulb go off, and that was not either what I said or what I meant. So again, whether I said it or didn't, it's not so much. This is not about accuracy. This is about getting more in touch with what I want to say. And so I meant it's something that I've noticed time and again, as opposed to a light bulb came off right now. But the beauty of this little example is it shows that, as a listener, you don't have to be uptight about, oh my God, am I going to miss it? And sometimes even missing it can be incredibly productive, because it helps the listener say something, oh, no, wait a minute, and see it. And it helps crystallize meaning.
Mm-hmm. So you're having an opportunity to show how, even if you have to correct the listener, that can be a powerful experiencer, both for the speaker, who's had to check and say, no, that isn't exactly what I meant, and for the listener to know, hey, I'm not God or anybody. I'm just doing my best. It's not a big deal. And the fact that I made a mistake was actually helpful to the speaker. And what you're pointing out is, I said, oh, a light bulb went off, and you're saying, no, not really. I knew this. I've seen this over and over again, this moment of convergence. And as you're speaking, I'm reminded I missed in my first reflection this whole part you had said about it gives the listener a freedom to make mistakes, to know that even a mistake or a need for correction, it just furthers the process on both sides.
Yeah. So I'm keeping repeating, yeah, again.
Yes. And I'm going to say this is not a listening response, but a teaching response. Whenever he does that, yeah. Where is he checking? He's checking inside. There's no yeah from his head. It's like, yeah, that fits. That fits my felt sense. That fits my felt experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to show, that passive listening, and then even more powerfully, active listening, helps the speaker go deeper into what their real meanings are, their deeper meanings. And that's the radical pause. New things come out when you speak from felt experience. And that's what's radical about pausing. Something new happens. So you could say that back, or we could.
I would like to say
that back.
I would like to say that back, but I would like to also add a little something. Okay. So the pause.
So you're saying me back first.
Yeah. The pause is radical because it allows new things to happen. Mm-hmm. And that is big.
And that is why we want to teach these listening skills, because things are not going to change in a person, in a conflict, in the world, unless people can source all of this rich inner wisdom from which change comes. And that was Gendlin's huge contribution, was pointing to all this implicit knowledge and the creativity and the forward movement in there.
Yeah. So that related to the pause is that capacity for tapping into all that inner creativity and making something happen. Letting something happen, allowing ourselves to connect with something fresh that we may not have seen otherwise.
And change the world, change situations. But I'm going to stop you. Also, everybody saw me going, yes, I'm checking. So I feel fully heard, and you may.
I want to just add a little something, because to me, what's striking is that we've said, and I mentioned it, and I want to end with this note: the yes. Like here again, you're doing the yes. I'm doing yeah. I think the part that's very important in a way is that if you watch two people having this kind of active listening conversation in a language that you know nothing about, you will get the flavor of what they're doing, because you will hear them, you will see them nodding, and you will see them say, yeah. And they may actually be talking about difficult topics where they feel differently from each other. But that process of talking creates a connection in which it is possible to feel connected even while talking about some things where we might be actually on different sides.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to stop you, and I can hold on to it. So this yes that we were both doing, you can see it in if you're watching two people in a language you don't even understand, having an active listening exchange, you'll see the yes, and you'll know that even if they're talking about a disagreement or radically different things, they're still able to understand each other, to have that moment of yes, of convergence again. So I guess I would say that's part of the magic for you, and empathic listening, active listening, brings people together, even if they're maybe that they are respecting their difference, something like that.
Yeah.
And you can see, audience, how much Serge and I love doing this. We could go on forever. It feels so good to be heard.
Yeah.
So good to be heard. It is for me, it's magical and life-giving.
Yeah.
And conflict resolution tool is mainly why we're offering it to you today in this format.